You've heard the word sustainable 1,000 times, right? Making our cities greener, more efficient. But what if I told you that's just not cutting it anymore? Seriously, the challenges we're facing today are so big that our source for this, from the Festival of Urbanism, says we need to ask a much, much tougher question.
So, is sustainable really good enough? I mean, is the goal just to do less bad? To not make things worse? Well, the argument we're looking at today is a hard no. They're saying the problems we're up against now are all tangled up together, creating something way more complicated. And they've got a word for it, polycrisis. It's a pretty powerful idea. It's not just tackling problems one by one. It's this giant, tangled web. Think about it, right? Climate change hits. You get crazy weather that forces people from their homes, and boom, social inequality gets even worse. It's a domino effect. Everything is connected. And a problem that messy, it needs a solution that's a lot bolder than just trying to keep things from falling apart.
Okay, so if sustaining isn't enough, then what is? Well, that's where we get to the heart of this whole thing. It's called a regenerative approach. And this is a total mind shift. It's about completely rethinking how we build our cities, not just trying to put a Band-Aid on the negative side effects. So what on earth is regenerative urbanism? In simple terms, instead of assuming that any new building or development is going to cause some harm, it flips the script. It says, hey, what if every change we make is an opportunity to actively make things better? We're talking about healing ecosystems, bringing back what we've lost, and really pumping life back into our communities. The goal is to leave the place better than we found it, a net positive. And this chart really spells it out, doesn't it? On one side, you've got sustainable, which is all about damage control, right? Minimizing harm, doing less bad. But regenerative, on the other side, that's about actively healing and restoring things. It's the difference between treading water and actually swimming towards a better shore. It's not just about survival, it's about thriving. Now, it's easy to think this is all just about planting more trees or cleaning up rivers, but it's so much bigger than that. The source material makes it crystal clear. You can't have a regenerative city without a foundation of justice, and that has to start with the rights of First Nations people, the original custodians of the land. And from there, it grows to include the rights of every single one of us to a healthy place to live. This quote right here, this is a game changer. We are rights holders, not just stakeholders. That line from Nunganwal woman Mary Mudford just completely reframes the whole debate. It's saying First Nations people aren't just one more voice in a crowded room to be consulted. They are sovereign peoples with inherent rights and a profound, unbroken connection to the land. Any truly regenerative plan has to start right there, by honoring and empowering that. And you can see this thinking in action in Australia with the Closing the Gap framework. Just look at the pillars here. It's all about real partnership, shared decision-making, building up community-controlled services, and even changing how government works from the inside. This is not about taking a box. It's a roadmap for a genuine shift in power and respect. And this isn't just some nice idea on paper. It's actually being written into law. Take the ACT in Australia, for example. It's the very first place in the country to make the right to a healthy environment an actual legal thing. That creates a whole new tool for people to fight for environmental justice. So, what does a right to a healthy environment actually give you? Well, it breaks down into two really important parts. First, you have the substantive rights. That's the real stuff, Clean air, safe water, a stable climate, the things we need to live. Then you have the procedural rights, and this is crucial. It's your right to get information, to have a say in decisions that affect you, and to have a path to justice if those other rights are being ignored. Okay, so we've established these fundamental rights. That's great. But how do we actually build a system that respects them? It's pretty obvious the old way of doing things, decisions made behind closed doors and then announced to the public, that's just not going to work. We need a whole new way to make decisions. And this quote, man, this one really lands. It's not engagement fatigue, it's you're not listening to me fatigue. How many people feel that? Communities get asked for their opinion over and over, and then it feels like it all goes into a black hole. People aren't tired of being asked. They're exhausted from being ignored. The problem was never the engagement itself. It was that the engagement didn't actually lead to anything. So here's the difference between the old way and the new. The old way is that classic top-down approach. One expert in our source calls it the tell, sell, yell method.
You tell people the decision, you try to sell them on it, and then you yell when they don't like it. But the deliberative way? It's totally different. It's about collaboration. It's about getting everyone on the same page with the facts, finding out what values you share, and then honestly talking about the trade-offs. It's how you build real trust.
And this isn't just theory. Look at the Snowy Water Deed. This was a massive, complicated, and super conflicted issue. The old tell, sell, yell approach would have been a disaster. So what did they do? They took their time. We're talking over a year and a half. For the first 6 months, they didn't even talk about the issue. They just focused on building trust and agreeing on how they'd work together. Only after that did they dig into the science and the hard choices. And the outcome? A recommendation that pretty much everyone could agree on, because they built it together. Okay, so this all sounds amazing, right? A more just, collaborative, healing way of building cities. But let's get real. The source material is not naive. It throws a big reality check right in the middle of all this, forcing us to ask the tough question. Is this just a nice idea, or can we actually pull it off? And here's the problem in a nutshell. You've got these huge, long-term goals, like, not letting the planet burn, clashing with really intense short-term pressures, like the housing crisis. And guess which one usually wins? Far too often, those big, important, regenerative goals get tossed aside for a quick, politically easy fix. And here's a perfect real-world example. A government wants to build more houses fast. So what do? They hit pause on new, greener building codes, and they call it a blitz on red tape. The intention might be to help people, but the result is a disaster for the climate. We end up locking in inefficient, carbon-heavy buildings for the next 50 years. It's the classic short-term win for a long-term loss. Which brings us right back to where we started. Is regenerative urbanism just a nice aspiration, or is it a realistic goal? The vision is powerful, no doubt. It's about healing our cities, our communities, our planet. But making that vision a reality, that means taking on some really tough political and economic battles. It's not going to be easy. But maybe the real question isn't if we need to do this anymore. It's about how we're going to find the courage to actually get it done.